This morning we are going to be looking at an extremely important book, and that is the Book of Life. But let's talk about books for a moment, because the critics of the Bible and the critics of Christianity want the world to think that somehow Christians are an illiterate group of people that are just taken by anything. They can be fooled. They're just ignorant people that they don't even know how to read. And that's an unusual thing to say. That is clearly not the case, because there's an awful lot of books that have been written for the Bible, and a lot of books that are being mentioned, and a lot of books that are demanded to be read from an organization, from the church, that doesn't promote literacy. Well, obviously that's not the case. Obviously, God demands literacy. God demands it from the very beginning when Moses is writing, that these words were to be copied by some. Matter of fact, every king was supposed to copy his own, to make his own copy. He was to make his own copy of the laws. And everyone was to understand these things, read these things, come to the proper conclusion of these things, always. And there has been an importance on books from the beginning, from the very beginning. And that I will say this, and it's something that I do think about on occasion, and there is a series of lessons that can be done on it, though I'm not prepared to do it at this moment. I'm not sure how many people would be that interested in it, but how the biblical text has actually changed literacy in the world and also writing in the world. Not just the reading, but also the writing, because it has. It most definitely has. And the reason I know that is you go back and you look at Genesis, first book written by a writing prophet, Moses, and look at what's being written at the same time by other people in his day. The Egyptians or those of Mesopotamia. See what they're writing, and the writings are very different. They're very different. And there is a skill and there is a command that's immediately found from the text of Genesis that is not found in those early writings of mankind. Not at all. They are very different. And there are those who want to say that places like Genesis are nothing more than things that were being written in the age, and it matches nothing that's being written in the age. And they'll do the same thing concerning the New Testament. The New Testament is nothing but fables and things that were being written in the first century, and it matches nothing that was being written in the first century. It doesn't match any of those things. It's entirely different because it's guided by the Holy Spirit, by God. Now, let's talk about the Book of Life. There is an importance, first off, on books and the books. And the earliest writings of men, the earliest writings were record keeping. That's what it was. The earliest writings weren't poems, they weren't stories, but were record keeping, which is what the Book of Life is. But before we get into that, let's go to Revelation chapter 22. Here is one of the last warnings, one of the last places where we are told that we must be obedient to the Word. Now, coming in later in verses 18 and 19 is the final warning of don't tamper with these words whatsoever. But we go to Revelation chapter 22, beginning in verse 8. Now I, John, saw and heard these things. And when I heard and saw, I fell down to worship before the feet of the angel who showed me these things. All right, he doesn't know who's before him, but he went to worship this angel. Well, this angel, he doesn't understand who it is. Then he said to me, see that you do not do that, for I am your fellow servant and of your brethren, the prophets, and those who keep the words of this book worship God. Notice where the angel places himself. First off, don't worship me. Stop that. Don't worship me. And then he says, I am right there. I am a minister. I am right there with the prophets, faithful ones, and those who do the words, who are obedient, who keep the words of this book. He puts himself in line with them, not any greater than them, just the same. So someone who keeps the words of this book joins in line with the prophets of these words, going back to Moses, and also the righteous angels, such as this one before John, joining in line with them. But also in this, those who keep the words of this book. That shows the importance of the words, and that one can't just pick and choose what they want out of it, because there is no notion of being allowed to do that. It is taking it all. That's what we're supposed to be doing, is obeying the words in this book. Those who do that will have their names in another book. Their name will be put into the book of life. And that is you want your name there. You want your name there. If no one on this earth knows your name, or even cares about your name, or remembers your name, that means nothing. It's God. You want Him knowing your name. You want Him putting your name in the book of life. Because there are only certain ones who will be there, and there will be those who will not be in it. You want to be in that book. And it is record keeping, is what it is. That's precisely what it is. It is record keeping. And it is going to be, it's a profound record. And it's one that's going to be used in judgment. We'll see that in just a bit. Actually, it was read for us just a few minutes ago. But we'll see that in a bit. Let's go to the book of Daniel. Daniel chapter 22. I'm sorry. I'm reading wrong. Daniel chapter 7. There is no Daniel chapter 22. Daniel chapter 7. Daniel chapter 7. And we begin in verse 9. Daniel 7, verse 9. Here is a vision that Daniel receives. And the book of Daniel has numerous visions in it. Some given to Daniel, some given to others, such as Nebuchadnezzar, but Daniel interprets those. There's a lot of visions in the book of Daniel, and here's one given to him directly. Verse 9, I watched till thrones were put in place, and the Ancient of Days was seated. His garment was white as snow, and the hair of his head was like pure wool. His throne was a fiery flame, its wheels a burning fire. A fiery stream issued and came forth from before him. 1,000 thousands ministered to him. 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him. The court was seated, and the books were opened. What is he seeing? He is seeing a judgment scene, is what he's seeing. He's seeing God on His throne and those ministering to Him, and there is no number you can come to for those ministering to Him, because you can't really come to the conclusion. But 1,000 thousands ministered, 10,000 times 10,000 stood before Him. It's unnumberable or innumerable. You cannot number the many that are ministering to Him. There's a lot. But here is this judgment, and this scene is a frightening one. It is the absolute seat, if you will, the center of power for God. Now, in places such as Rome, the Roman Empire, which is when the first century in the New Testament is written, that one would say that the seat of power was in Rome, and it was when there was a Caesar, after the Republic, when there was a Caesar, then the power really rested with him and the Senate. That the power of the Roman Empire was there. But the power of Roman Empire was extremely limited even then. That it only stretched so far on the earth, and the earth was much bigger than the Roman Empire. But it's also limited in time. The Roman Empire has no authority whatsoever. There is no seat of power for the Roman Empire today. It doesn't exist. But here is the center of power where everything was created. This is the center of power where God can speak things into existence. And this is the seat of power where all will be judged. All of mankind is going to be judged. And it says books were open. Now, he's not specific as to those books. Now, John's going to become more specific, and we'll get there in just a second. But keeping the words of this book is going to be important, because as we're going to find, as we can see, these books that are being opened are what judges humanity. That the standard has been given to us. That if we follow the standard, that how do we enter heaven? How can we be saved? It's all been given to us. It's been given to us by writing. Now let's just step back for just a second and discuss, just as a side point, how God could do this. How could God give information, communicate to mankind His will and His word? How could He do it? Well, He has several options. It could be that it's simply by word of mouth. That we'll just start with Moses. He tells Moses what the teaching is, and then Moses tells others. And then those others tell others, and that comes down through the line from Moses. And then you have others that come in, such as Samuel and David, and that they are beginning to prophesy, and this is added to everything else that has been spoken. And all these things go from one generation, spoken from one generation to the next generation, and what's going to happen? Well, we all know what's going to happen. It's not going to remain the same. It can't. It's going to go from one to the next, and innocently enough, something's going to be forgotten. Innocently enough. But not so innocently enough will be those who will corrupt it. And it won't take long before you're going to have wild variations in all of this. And none of it may be true. Wild variations. And none of it may be what God actually gave to Moses. Now, God could have done it that way. But He didn't. God could have also just decided every generation gets a set of prophets. Every generation does. Every generation that He will inspire. In the days of Moses, it's going to be Moses. Okay? And that Moses is going to tell everyone what God says. Then Moses dies, and then it'll have to be Joshua. It'll have to be somebody. Somebody is the next prophet that once again tells everybody what Moses was told, and then what he's being told. God could give just an endless supply of prophets through every age. He could have done that, but He doesn't. What He does is far more permanent, and that is put it down in pen and ink, and then protect it, which He has. Put it down in pen and ink. That way everyone can go directly to what God actually said, letter for letter. And that's the way you want it. That's precisely the way you want it. If you were in a contract, some very, very important contract with someone, you would want to see the contract and be able to look at it letter for letter, and also maybe even give it to your lawyer. Let him look at it letter for letter and see, is this the contract, is this right? Or you could just let the whoever you have a contract with give me the contract, and I can just sum it up for you in just a few words. And trust me, there will be details that are going to be left out. But I can sum it up. We'll just say, yeah, you're buying a house and it's for this price, and that's it. Whatever the contract happens to be. Or you're going to be working for this company, and this is what you got. And that's it. You probably want to look at the words of that contract. But here is something far greater than that, and that is the biblical text. You want it in its purity. You want that. You don't want someone summing it up. You don't want someone just kind of doing a quick and brief statement concerning it. You want to know it letter for letter. You've got to. And thus, the books that will judge us. Now, yes, it's Christ who's judging us, but here's the standard. He's not left us without a standard. We can know what we're going to be judged by. These books that we have now will be opened on the day of judgment. They will be. Now, let's go to Revelation chapter 20. We go there. This was read to us earlier, but we'll read it again and a little bit further. John he too is seeing a vision. And like Daniel, the book of Revelation is a lot of vision. There's a lot of vision in the book of Revelation. Matter of fact, I would suggest there's more in the book of Revelation than the book of Daniel, but that doesn't matter. Anyway, John sees this judgment scene that Daniel saw. He sees this. Then I saw a great white throne and him who sat on it, from whose face the earth and heaven fled away, and there was found no place for them. Now he's adding some details. It's the Holy Spirit adding these details, obviously. He's seeing a vision that Daniel didn't see, or at least he didn't record. There are things that John sees in this, and that heaven and earth are done away with. They are gone. That's material realm. Verse 12. And I saw the dead, small and great, standing before God, and the books were opened. Now that's what Daniel saw. He saw books were open, and he also saw where there was judgment being done. There's judgment being done. He sees that. But John sees a little bit more in this. And all the dead, small and great, standing before God, and the books were open. What are those books? It's these books that compose the Bible. The 66 books here that we will be judged by. And we will be judged by them. By how we kept the whatever law we were under today. Everyone's under the law of Christ today. But prior to the cross, that wasn't the case. You have the law of Moses and the law of patriarchy, which was for the Gentiles. They were under that law. We're under the law of Christ, which is the perfect law. Those books were open. Now, and another book was opened. So this is different from those first books. Another book is open, which is the book of life. And the dead were judged according to their works by the things which are written in the books. What does the book of life hold? Well, it doesn't hold the standard, because it says they were judged by the books, not by the book of life. They were judged by the books. So what does it hold? As we will find out, these are names. And these are the names of the innocent and the saved. I'm making a distinction here. Who are the innocent? Those would be souls who died as children. That'd be a lot of those. That'd be a lot of those. The saved, who are those? Those that lived to come of age, and they are held responsible for their actions, and they sought God and obeyed Him. Those are the saved. So who's in this book? In this book are the innocent. It's all those who will be going to heaven. It's the innocent and it's the saved. That's who are there. Verse 13, the sea gave up the dead who were in it. Death and Hades delivered up the dead who were in them. And they were judged each according to their works. Then death and Hades were cast into the lake of fire. This is the second death. And anyone, verse 15, and anyone not found written in the book of life was cast into the lake of fire. You want your name in that book, because if your name is absent from that book, your future is horrible. Your future it's going to be eternal, and it's going to be cast away into hell. You want your name in that book. And you can't bribe your way in. You cannot have someone sneak it in. You cannot approach the book. This is by God and God only. And no one touches that book. No one touches that book. This is God who has set this. And here's something beyond our reach. And yes, someone can sin today, and the earth does not shudder. It continues on its rotation. The clouds do not drop from the sky. They continue on their path. The sky is just as blue as it was. The sun shines just as it was. There is no form of disturbance in nature at all from someone who sins. But something very well can happen in heaven that's worse than any of those things. For them is that their name is stricken. Their name is taken from the book of life. It's put out. And of course, this would be something that would be constantly up to date, because God knows who belongs to Him. It would be constantly up to date. Something that no man could possibly know. No man could even keep up with. But God does. He does know about this. He knows those who have fallen away. He knows whether they come back or not. He knows those that never were His. He knows everything. And that book will reflect it. And it is a serious and somber matter that you want your name there more than any other place. Let's go to chapter 17. So we're still in the book of Revelation, chapter 17. And we just look at verse 8. The beast that you saw was and is not, and will ascend out of the bottomless pit and go to perdition. And those who dwell on the earth will marvel, whose names, look at this, are not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, when they see the beast that was and is not and yet is. Okay, we're not going to go into all the detail in all this, but here is someone referred to as a beast, and we can know that's a man because Revelation tells us it's a man. But here is someone who is being worshiped and admired as though he is a god and he has power upon the earth. But it's just the typical power that one would have from men. Okay, can control armies? Sure. That's not supernatural to control armies. Controlling the fate over people's lives? Sure. Men can kill each other. Nothing unusual about that. But here is this man who's worshipped. And notice what it says, that those who dwell on the earth will marvel, whose names are not written in the book of life. What does that mean? That these people have rejected the truth. They hate the truth. Therefore, they will attach themselves to anything that comes down the line. And here is this very powerful individual, and it's someone also who is, there's a lot of lore and a lot of fakery and a lot of deception to this person, of having powers supposedly that he does not possess. But they attach themselves to him rather than God, and they prove to all that their name is not in the book of life, because they care nothing about God. They care nothing about Him. They're just living however they want to live, as wickedly as they want to live, and admire the fact that others are joining with them, and take pride in themselves that they are doing the same. And in their arrogance and foolishness, they follow this one who is called the beast. But notice these words, whose names are not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world. Now, someone can take this, and we've been discussing this. Someone can take this, strip it out, and say, those names have been in the book before time. Those names are there, and they're there before time even began. But is that what's being taught? Is it that those names are there? Or is it that the book of life was there, existed from the foundation of the world? Which is it? Well, we're going to see it's the book that's been there from the foundation of the world. It's not that God has the list, has always had the list in front of Him, as though we had no options on our own. But it is there as a record. It is there as a record, and we will see that in this record goes through time as time progresses. As the history of the world passes by, that book is updated constantly. It is there, and it is by God's own will that this occurs. Let's go to chapter 13. Revelation 13 and verse 8. All who dwell on the earth will worship Him whose names have not been written in the book of life of the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. Now here, once again, we can look at some things. Okay? First off, you have those who make themselves victims of some false teacher, some man who is seeking power, and he makes them victims because they rejected the truth. Here comes in someone, and they will accept him because he rejects the truth too. He represents worldliness, and that's what they're after, and so they will attach themselves to him. And there is an enormous gap between those who believe that Jesus is the Christ, who believe and worship and obey God, and those who do not. There's an enormous gap in the way they see everything, and it's nothing new. There's this gap in the way they view the world, in the way they view human life, in the way they view spirituality, in the way they view the supernatural, in the way they view everything. There's this immense gap that is there because one refuses the truth of God and the other fully accepts the truth of God. And it goes right with them into eternity. Right with them. Now, notice in all this, we go back to verse 8, so chapter 13, verse 8. You have those whose names have not been written in the book of life of the Lamb. This belongs to Him. It is called the book of life, but here it's given more of a title, more of who possesses it, of the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. And yes, before the first day of creation, from eternity, the Godhead knew that humanity, even though from eternity it had not been created, that humanity would have to have a Savior. And that it would take the Son of God and the entire plan of salvation, the entire everything concerning salvation, that the Christ had to die. Did He literally die from the foundation of the world? On what, day 1 did He die on the cross? No, nor on day 6 did He die on the cross. No, but it is this understanding that yes, this was in the mind of God, the plan of God, that this was going to happen, and it did occur. All of that was from the foundation of the world, before the foundation of the world. Now, let's go to Psalm 193. And this is just continuation and idea of God knowing everything. Psalm 139. I'm getting my numbers all wrong. Psalm 139 and verse 16. And this is a wonderful psalm. And I don't guess I should ever say that any psalm is not wonderful. But this is a psalm of David, and David expressing the power of God and things that he can understand, but they're really hard to conceive, to conceptualize. And things that he knows, but there is an astonishing power and intelligence that's beyond him that he can't quite fully grasp. But he gets the basics of it. He gets the basics. So we're in Psalm 139 and verse 16. Your eyes saw my substance being yet unformed, and in your book they all were written, the days fashioned for me, when as yet there were none of them. God knows all things. He knows everything, and He knew what David would be before David is even formed. He knew all those things. But David could still fall away. And David could return. David could show the faith. David could also reject faith. It's entirely up to him. Now, let's go. We have discussed God knowing all things. Let's go to Exodus chapter 32. Exodus 32. And we're going to address now the idea that someone's name is in the book of life and cannot be removed, and it's been there from the beginning of time, before the beginning of time. Or that someone's name is not in the book of life, and it will never be in it. It's never been it from the beginning, nor can it ever be put in it. And that's simply not the case. We go to Exodus chapter 32, and we begin in verse 31. And this is with Israel. Well, they've gone back to idolatry. They've gone to idolatry. There they are at the base of Mount Sinai. The power of God can be seen day and night, and yet they go to idolatry here at the base. Then Moses returned to the Lord and said, "Oh, these people have committed a great sin and have made for themselves a god of gold. Yet now, if you will forgive their sin, but if not, I pray, blot me out of your book which you have written." All right, what does Moses say? He says something very similar that Paul says in the book of Romans we were studying a couple of weeks ago. That he says, Moses says, please forgive these people, but if not, you can just take my name off of there too. Well, that's not the way it works. And God tells him, That's not the way it works. And the Lord said to Moses, whoever has sinned against me, I will blot him out of my book. So the name was there. The name was there. Otherwise the word blot wouldn't even be there. It's just that, God would say, they never were. The one who sins, they never were in the book. But here is this first inkling that there is a book. Here's this first understanding that God does have a book, that He does have a record of these things. And someone's name can be there. And I'll tell you right now, I know everyone's name has been in the book of life. Everybody. Because you're conceived, you're a human life, you're innocent, and your name is there. Your name is there. Until you decide one can be caught in ignorance, one can be caught in numerous ways of sin, and your name removed. But it can be brought back. It can be brought back. And that is precisely the teaching, that's precisely why Christ came to the earth. Let's go now back to, let's go to Psalm 69 first. Psalm 69. This is a psalm of the Christ. This concerns the Christ. This is, and the reason I know this is because of the New Testament. The New Testament takes us back to Psalm 69 for various quotes and applies them to the Christ, so we can know it is from the Christ. And here is that lamb who was slain before the foundation of the world. Here is that lamb who has that book of life. This lamb now is as though he's expressing it, though the writer of this is David. David's inspired by the Holy Spirit. David does not and cannot write this about himself. This is about someone else, and it is the Messiah, the Christ. Verse 28, let them be blotted out of the book of the living and not be written with the righteous. Now, who's he talking about? He is talking about his enemies. He's talking about having more enemies than there's hair on his head, and that they hate him without cause, and all the persecution going up against him. And he says this, and this is our Creator in the flesh saying these words, because this is concerning the Christ. Let them be blotted out of the book of the living. So evidently their name had been there, but now it's being taken out. It's being taken out altogether. Now we go to Revelation chapter 3. Revelation 3, we have Christ addressing the churches, 7 churches of Asia. And we're going to verse 5, and this is to Sardis. And here we can very well understand that these individuals, they are members of His church. They were just your basic sinners in the world. They learned the truth, they obeyed the truth, and there's a message given to each congregation, given to each church in the various cities, these 7 cities in Asia. And here we have the words, he who overcomes shall be clothed in white garments. So it's overcoming. And I will not blot out his name from the book of life, but I will confess his name before my Father and before his angels. This is what Christ promises to do. But we must overcome. That requires patience and perseverance, is what that requires. Continual faithfulness to Him, regardless of what happens to us. regardless of the change of seasons, regardless of the change of people, regardless of what, good days, bad days, that regardless of persecutions, that we overcome, that we remain faithful with Him. And He is warning His churches that there's going to be persecution. He's warning them and He's telling them to overcome. And if they do overcome, then their name will not be blotted out of the book of life. But if they don't, well, the opposite would be true. If they don't overcome, if they fall away, then their name is taken from the book of life. Now, once again, these were people just like everybody else. They are coming from different backgrounds and different sins. They are saved by Christ, their obedience to Him. They are saved. So it clearly their name wasn't in the book of life. They are saved. Clearly their name is in the book of life. As a matter of fact, He says that their names are. But if they don't overcome, then their names will be taken out again. It'll be taken out. Now we go to chapter 21 and verse 27. And here we get once again who owns this book. And Christ knows who belongs to Him. He, like a shepherd knows his sheep, Christ knows us. He knows those who belong to Him. But there shall by no means, verse 27, so Revelation 21, verse 27, but there shall by no means enter it anything that defiles, and he's talking about heaven, or causes an abomination or a lie, but only those who are written in the Lamb's book of life. That book belongs to Him. He knows who's written in it, and He's written it. He knows who's there. He's the one who puts the names in, and He's the one who can take the names out. No man can do that at all. If we go back to, well, just go to Acts chapter 2, we see this actually taking place. Though it doesn't mention the book of life, this is what's taking place. And we see in Acts chapter 2, it's the day of Pentecost, there after Christ ascended into heaven. We see that there's a message that is given in Jerusalem. It is the first gospel preaching that is done after the ascension of Christ, the first day of the church, the kingdom of God upon the heaven, from heavens here. And we see verse 47, praising God and having favor with all the people, and the Lord added to the church daily those who were being saved. The Lord added to His church. Well, what's He doing in that? Their names are going into the book of life. They had been previously, in their childhood, taken out at their age of accountability and leaving God, becoming prodigal, as we all do, and added now, put back in, and they are added to His church. And in that adding, it is Christ who is doing this. No man can do it, but it's Christ doing it. And He is also the one. That book belongs to Him. He's the one putting the names in. He's the one striking them out. He does it. And it is a somber subject, but it's one that we must understand. You want your name in that book. Is it worth everything for your name to be on that book, be in that book? Yes, it is. It's worth everything. Because this life You know, the world would have you think that while you're here, just get what you can get and have do whatever you can do that makes you happy, whatever wealth and fame or whatever else you can get, you take what you can. It is dog eat dog. And you only get one life. Well, that's kind of a hopeless thing, isn't it? That's kind of a rugged idea. But this life is just the beginning of our life. It's just the beginning. And this is just a small, small fraction of what our life is. Because beyond this earth, it's eternity. Beyond this earth, it will be where the mortal has put on immortality. The corruptible has put on incorruption. And living with God eternally. Living with Him in a world that He has made, in a city as it's described, but it is custom made. There is a place that Christ has custom made for you. And you can claim it by being obedient to Him. We need to look at our lives because those books, there will be a day when those books are open and the book of life is open and it will hold every name going into heaven. And yeah, we can read also from the book of Revelation, there's a lot that are going in. But comparing those going into heaven, those going into hell, the number is very different. There's a lot more that are cast into hell than will ever see heaven. And we ask this morning that you look at your life, that we all take a moment and be honest with ourselves. Otherwise, we become an enemy of ourselves and to our own detriment, harming ourselves. That we be honest with ourselves and do what is right. Do what we need to do now. And if there's any way that, if we can help you, if you need the prayers of the congregation, if you need to respond to the invitation in any way, we ask that you come as we stand and sing.